Welcome to a new episode of Publisher SEO podcast. This time, Jes Scholz is my guest. Jes, how are you?
I'm doing really well. How are you doing?
I'm doing well too. Very excited to have you on board.
Thank you.
So let's start. For those who don't know you yet, who are you and what do you do in life?
Well, that's a big question. So I am a growth marketer. I specialize in mega enterprise SEO. So you take an enterprise company and 10 times it, you're talking about millions, if not billions of pages, that level of SEO. I also really like to look at the future of search and what's coming up. So it's a lot of right now in that AI space.
That's a perfect fit because it's one of our main topics today, because AI mode has finally rolled out in Germany. How do you see it impacting the marketing scene or publishers?
So I think publishers are more susceptible to the impacts of AI mode, same as we were with AI overviews. That being said, I expect it will be very similar to what we saw in the States. Well, yes, technically it is live, but that doesn't mean from day dot we have AI mode taking over all of the searches. It's still not showing up on the vast majority. And if it does show up, it's something you need to kind of click through and engage with. And I think that is going to be the case for still quite some months as Google learns how to best integrate it into the market. So availability doesn't necessarily mean high adoption. That being said, it's something that definitely having it tracked, taking care of, well, what's this impacting for my specific business? How is that trending over time? And already be putting in place strategies in order to defend your unique competitive advantage whilst you do have this time is a smart strategy, because you don't want to be starting to deal with it when it does come and start eating up some of those clicks, which is inevitable.
So is something different now compared to our pre-AI phase
I
in
would
strategies
say
you recommend?
I think it's this a clearer recognition that there is more to Google than just a search engine. And this has been a case for publishers, especially for many years, where if you look at a large swath of the publisher ecosystem and where the traffic actually comes from, it's heavier on the discover side than it is on the search side. So already for a long time, we've been dealing with a situation that hasn't been about specific keywords. It's more been about topics of interest and discovery and putting content out there. And we've done quite well of extending this not only to text-based formats, but to video-based formats as well. I think it's common knowledge that YouTube is one of the biggest search engines in the world after Google, that it outperforms Bing, that you have a lot of searches happening on social media, whether that's your traditional social media like Facebook, or whether that's your newer social medias of TikToks or Instagrams or whatever your preference is. So we're very familiar with needing to adapt to different platforms. Now, this one's a little bit different because in all of those other platforms, it was still your content. It was your videos on those platforms, and you were trying to get distribution and coverage for those. While in this case, it is uncontrollable to an extent, snippets of your content combined with other people's content, combined with training data. It's not your article, it's not your snippet like we've seen with traditional search. But that doesn't stop the fact that it is here, it is not going away, and we need to handle that situation.
I think we can control a bit is the topic of crawling. You wrote an article about it recently for a search engine land. What do you recommend businesses or publishers in that case?
I'm very much of the opinion of, in the vast majority of cases, let them crawl and still encourage them to crawl. At the end of the day, you have a choice. Either you are going to be in the consideration set of the AI or you are not. And if you don't let them crawl, you will not have high visibility. It's not saying it's impossible. If you say, don't crawl me, they might still cite what is actually your content because your content is syndicated by somebody else, either legally or illegally, or your content is quoted by another publication, or you are so strong in the training data set that is going to reference your company in any case because of all of that information it had before you block the crawlers. But the probability of you regularly getting coverage on new topics is very low. And if you block the crawlers, even if you get coverage, as I mentioned, you will not be a citation. And if I have a choice between being included and having the chance to have that brand salience and maybe win a click, but it's a lot of that brand salience that's important versus not having that, I'm going to choose to have that space for my brand to be part of that conversation. Now, there is an argument to be had about, well, what about the content that is truly unique? And if you're giving away that truly unique, maybe you go off and you've done an investigative piece. If you go off and give that away, well, what's the value of your website? Why should people come to your website? And I think that there is an element of testing that needs to be done there for each individual brand about what do you have something that is so precious that you do lock it down because people will be willing to pay money for that, and that's going to grow your subscriptions. That's going to grow your brand at a pace that allows you to remain market competitive. But what you see with a lot of these brands is if you completely shut down and you're not someone as strong as the New York Times, then you might end up in a situation where even though you're controlling your content, people are not being familiar with your brand, you're not growing that audience, and it's going to over time continue to shrink to a point where you don't have the resources to continue to survive, to continue to produce that high quality content. And so you need to find that balance of giving away enough that you're still reaching your audience, that you're still building that brand salience, that you're keeping top of mind to be able to drive things like direct traffic to the site or downloads of the app or whatever it might be, whilst balancing potentially for some publishers not giving away that golden content or putting a delay on the golden content. So you give it to your subscribers exclusively for a week or a month or whatever an appropriate cadence is, and then you let in the LLM crawlers.
Yeah, that makes sense. Like, let's say stuff which is available everywhere, a crawler can have them, but unique stuff like reportages or interviews or whatever, you could decide if we give it away, but mostly it would be better to not give it away. Did I understand you right?
I would say give it away with a delay. The similar you would do with any syndication source. See an LLM just as another syndication partner where you're ultimately in control of if and when that gets syndicated. But we know from the existence of syndication itself, like having that additional visibility is ultimately positive for your brand. This is why so many of us do content syndication as an original source. And so this is just a different type of syndication partner.
Yeah, that's interesting. There are publishers in Germany, they have a subscription model, but after some time they give it away for their readers for free too. So yeah, that's interesting. I have to admit I didn't consider this thing. Thanks for the new insights. But let's say AI stuff is coming and evolving, but right now the traffic impact, it's very minimal for publishers. So what's in for them?
So I think it's minimal at this point in time because AI mode is not a primary interface. And ChatGPT, while it's very impressive what they've been able to do in terms of growing their market traction, when you look at them in comparison to Google, it's not even David and Goliath. It's baby David and Goliath. So we're not really feeling what this impact is going to be. It's not just search moves from typing keywords into a box to prompting. It's that we're going to start to see an emergence of a completely different way of interacting with the internet, of seeking information. It's going to be more in situ, more natural. And this leads to an expansion of search, not necessarily of traditional keyword searches, but an expansion of people seeking information. And this is only a good thing ultimately for publishers, but how you position yourself and your brand in that ecosystem, and most importantly, how you turn around to monetize that, is really a challenge that is going to disrupt a lot of people, because if your primary revenue model has been banner advertising on the website, it is inevitable, in my view, that clicks are going to decrease, especially if you've relied heavily on commodity content, these SEO content of, top 10 things about XYZ, or how do you ABC. These pieces that a large language model can answer just as good, if not better, than your journalist who is using a large language model to produce the piece and put it on your own website. That sort of content, I don't see a long, healthy lifespan for publishers.
I agree with you in this term, definitely. You can see it with AI overuse right now. Content you can answer with some sentences, the AI will get it, and you don't need a human to produce it. Let's be honest. But
and readers won't come to it, because why would I go through that friction of having to search for it and then click through to your website and then accept your cookie banner and then deal with all of your ad pop-ups and then have to scroll down because you put more banner ads above the fold, and then I can read the content? Why wouldn't I just get that directly from AI mode or ChatGPT? It's so much less friction that ultimately we need to give the reader a valuable reason why they should click through to your website. And that can't be content that is just readily available as an answer from an LLM.
Yeah, from a usability perspective, it's much more easier to follow AI mode or AI overviews, or let's say use LLMs like ChatGPT, Gemini, Claude, whatever, directly in their interface. I'm with you. Now I have a big question for you, because it's about the content strategy. What do you think? What's the right approach for publishers in AI mode, in an AI mode world now and going forward? What should they do?
So in my view, it's still very much about getting the visibility. And then once you have that visibility, giving that user a really clear reason to click. And we can see in the AI mode interface, you really only have 3 slots. There's the very top citation, which is before the text. And then that very top citation is the top of the 3 citations at the bottom of the text. And then there's 2 more. And if you're not one of those 3 visible citations, even though the piece might be an amalgamation of 20, 25 different sources, if you're not the top 3, you have 0 brand visibility. And so there is very little to no value in being included in that citation. So the first key for publishers is be seen. You have to be seen in that AI mode summary. And being first, similar to with traditional search, is really important. But being first is not enough. If I'm first and I'm not leveraging that space to give the user a reason to click, it's a wasted opportunity. They're going to skim over it, pay no attention to it, and just start reading the text. And so in that one citation above the fold, if you're lucky enough to win that, or if you've strategized to win that, it's not luck, it is strategy. You have to leverage that to get the click. There's a big difference between a title that says, top 10 tips for tennis fashion, or one that says Anna Wintour's guide to Wimbledon. One, I'm not going to click because it's just unengaging. The other one, well, I have a lot of respect for Anna Wintour. I definitely want to know her specific opinion on fashion. And so it comes back to that quality of the content and what you can promise the reader that nobody else can promise. Like, why should I click through to your website? Answer that question. And then as a publisher, you're always going to be fine because you add value to the ecosystem and readers will reward value.
What is value for you?
Value as a reader is that you're telling me something that I can't get that information somewhere else, or I don't trust that information from somewhere else. And I think that trust factor is going to become more and more important. We saw this, for example, when COVID hit, and there was a lot of disinformation and misinformation around COVID happening at the time. And so we saw readership of traditional, well-respected, trustworthy news portals significantly increase during this period because people weren't turning to their social media because they couldn't trust it. And they couldn't turn to one another because of the situation we were in. As we see this flood of AI slop, if you're not contributing to that commoditization, if you're sticking to authenticity, if you're sticking to producing original, valuable, meaningful, opinionated content, I believe that is something that humanity will gravitate towards and be willing to pay for, or that businesses will be willing to pay for access to that audience who wants to engage with the brand in a meaningful way.
Very important points you said. What should publishers stop doing in the new world?
I think we need to understand that the business model is changing and we need to stop being so critical and dismissive of influencers. I think when you put journalists in a room with influencers, the journalists definitely feel superior. And then you look at, in some cases, there's always exceptions on both sides. But if you look at the reach and the influence that those social media content creators have, and you look at the reach and influence that some publications journalists have, if I was a brand and I wanted to spend my money, I'm more going to put it on that creator economy. And this is exactly what we're seeing happen with a lot of advertising budgets at this point in time. That this creator economy is not some 17-year-old girl sitting in her, bedroom at home and singing along to music. This is a multi-million-dollar industry, and these people work for their money and they have strategies, and it is a real job. And I don't see journalists taking that seriously, that this finance influencer or career influencer or fashion influencer has just as much to say, and it's not less because it's being said on TikTok. It doesn't make it more because you're putting it in print. What matters is who you are and what you have to say. And so if we take this up to look at it from a business perspective, from a publisher's perspective, your journalists, they are your assets. You are talent management. An editor-in-chief is the head of a talent management agency. The same way you see, musicians belong to their agents, your journalists are your main assets, and your job is to market them. Your job is to make sure that their content has an audience, an engaged, loyal audience that then allows you to monetize off the back of that. And so I think we need to step away from to have this column. You need to be the 25 years of experience, you've worked your way up writer. To have that column, you need to have the best thing to say. And you need to give them the platform to say it. And this is what media has been about. And I think we've lost our way on that a little bit over the years. And we've prioritized the wrong things. And so now we see social media as a threat. And we see AI as a threat. While we should be seeing these as opportunities to communicate our message and find ways of then monetizing those messages so we can keep afloat as media, as an organization.
Yeah, in Germany, we mostly have podcasts as another medium. But as you said, YouTube is a very big chance, or TikTok. Also, we have a lot of great creators in YouTube. There's one channel, its name is Tomatolix in German. And he has a lot of videos which are covering questions like how is the daily work in the life of a bartender. And he covers a lot of stuff. And his videos, they can click like 1 to 2 millions. Of course, he has a whole team, but it's very nice way he's working. He's very neutral in his ways of questioning and interviewing. Like, that's something he's, in fact, at some point working like a journalist. So I want to, talk about it. Very interesting, Jes. Yeah.
I think the difference is these creators don't have journalistic training, and like we go through those processes for a reason. We have journalism school for a reason. And combining the two, having media houses that understand the value of having people who have been to journalism school and have that education and training and understanding of the gravitas of what media does for a society, balanced against raw talent and engagement and loyalty of an audience, and that ability to build that audience. If we combine those two things together, I don't see media being at risk from AI at all. But as long as we try to fight against becoming this talent management source and stick to the old ways of publishing, I think it's going to be a bit of a struggle.
Another question I have is about you've written something on LinkedIn about quality content is meaningless, in dangerous SEO term, and you prefer distribution-worthy content. What do you mean by that?
So quality content is very intrinsic, your definition of quality. And yes, we can look to like Google's EEAT guidelines, but they're not specific, because a definition of quality is really intrinsic. What one organization would be considered quality is going to be trash in another organization. Distribution worthy content is not judged by your opinion. It's judged by the network, the algorithm, the location on which you're putting it. Does it get traction there? Did it engage that audience? It focuses on not publishing the piece, but marketing that piece and what you get back from marketing it well. I think we need to stop focusing on the amount of quality that we produce and focus on how much value producing that content gives us. Because if I produce 100 pieces a week and only half of them get any traction whatsoever, I'm actually harming my SEO. And it might fit all of my quality guidelines, but if it's not actually getting traction, having that content on the website reduces the domain's authority, its traction, its reputation. While if I limited that down and just focused on 10 pieces instead of 100, but for those 10 pieces, when I published it, if I saw it didn't get traction on whatever network or whatever strategy, because we publish things for different reasons, if I see it doesn't start getting traction on that platform in a relatively quick period of time for that place it's got to go, then republish it, rephrase it, understand, was it the right fit in the first place? Do I need to change my editorial strategy? Should I produce this type of content again? It has to be this feedback loop of what happened after publication that becomes the primary driver of strategy, not we're going to produce what we think is quality content.
And also, publishers tend to produce, like you said, too much stuff at some point because you think that's the needs for the readers or for whatever, but in fact, they don't get traction. And also, I mean, it costs a lot of money, and for journalists, it's not nice to have a feeling like you've written it for your own journal if no one has written has read it. One topic I want to talk with you about is Google Discover. What's your take on it? How will it develop?
I think we'll only see this channel grow overall. We've seen this with the expansion from mobile to now desktop as well. We do see a lot of traction on it. The challenge is now it is going to get more competitive because you have AI mode coming in, because that threatens clicks from search, because everybody, for good or bad reasons, really wants to focus on still growing clicks and growing traffic. Rightly or wrongly, that is still a KPI of many publishers. And so when you have more publishers competing for discover traffic, even when you increase the amount of discover traffic, that doesn't necessarily mean you're going to be able to increase your slice of that pie. It's going to be much more competitive. And so for a publisher, you really need to focus down on what are strategies that work for you. Is that building your topical authority? Is that building your followership, which is an interesting new addition to Discover, which can be really powerful if you've already put in the work to get that knowledge graph entity to have a followable profile, which is not the case for the vast majority of publishers. So it's going to be a difficult strategy to lock in, and it's going to emphasize those top publishers who are already market leaders. If you're not a market leader, you're going to find it increasingly difficult to compete because they can influence the algorithm in a way that you can't. And so what are you going to do about that? Are you going to go in with video instead? Which again, we're seeing significantly more videos coming through in Discover than we have before. I think it's only a matter of time until we get vertical video showing up in Discover as well. Or we see a lot more tweets than we ever saw in the past. For whatever reason, Google and X still have this weird relationship that they've had for over a decade where they're preferenced. And so we see a lot of tweets coming into Discover now as well. So a lot of people have their own opinions of X as a platform. I won't get into that, but purely from an SEO perspective, it is something that should be maintained unless you have zero audience traction there, which is not the case for the vast majority of publications, because it does give you that Twitter carousel in traditional search. It does give you potential to get into Google Discover. And the trick is you're not going to see that social coverage, those video coverage in your Google Search Console. So be mindful that when you're assessing the value of Google Discover, it's not the Discover report in Search Console. That's one data source of the value of this as a distribution platform, but YouTube is another, and traditional search is another. And so you've really got to be thinking about what are all of the distribution points that I'm optimizing for? Where is all of that reporting available if it is available? And how do I consolidate that to have a clearer picture of my brand overall? Because Discover is just one of many discovery points that you could be reaching your audience on.
Yeah, very nice, very interesting. I have to rethink a lot of stuff which I learned today. Let's imagine our publisher future in 5 years. What do you think would changed until then?
I think we've been suffering through a traffic decrease, and this has hurt a lot of publishers, and it's hurt journalism as an industry. We're probably in 5 years though starting to stabilize out. We've found our new norm, and hopefully we've taken heed of these new revenue models. We've given a lot more value to the talent that our journalists, our employees bring, and they're really understanding their value. And hopefully society has started to understand their value a little more as well, because we would have lived through 5 years of not just text-based generative AI, but video AI slop as well. And I do believe that as a society, we're going to get to a point where we seek out authenticity. And that's going to come back to, have you been able to maintain your brand presence, that brand salience in your audience's mind? And I think we're going to see a lot more direct traffic if you have a good user experience that's not overloaded with ads, because users aren't going to tolerate that the same way they have in the past. Previously, I didn't have really a choice. If I wanted the news, I had to go and buy the physical newspaper, or I had to come to your website and accept that it will be loaded with ads or use an ad block. Now we have another choice. That other choice doesn't have at this point in time. Let's see how long that is maintained by Google and OpenAI ads. And so if yours is overloaded, it's going to be difficult to compete. I'm not saying you have to strip all of the banner ads off your site, of course not. But I think we need to be a lot more strategic with how we use them. And we need to push back against sales a lot more, because the sales teams really do focus on, let's make money today. They don't often have a very strong focus of, if we continue to squeeze this lemon so tightly to get every single piece of juice out today, we can't grow more lemon trees tomorrow. So there needs to be a balance and an understanding of, I understand if we put a big pop-up banner ad every single time you try to click through to a new article, we will make more money today. But how does that hurt our brand? How does that encourage people to go to other websites or to go to these other surfaces? How does that impact my authenticity if you're interrupting my information seeking experience constantly with these intrusive advertisements? And so it comes down to find better ways of monetizing. This is what we need to do if we're going to be there still in 5 years' time. Yes, banner ads will be one component. That's okay. What other components are you investing in to make sure you have multiple healthy revenue streams? Those are the brands that are going to be around in 5 years' time.
I know we are in the present right now. So it's quite of an unfair question, but do we have some other revenues in mind
Newsletter
from today?
revenues are really going well for many publishers. So having like very strong, themed, meaningful newsletters that you can then put, either have it sponsored by companies, put banner ads in the newsletters. I know I was just harping on them, but again, having them there in a subtle way, not a problem. Having them there at the very top so you can't read the article, problem. Like, find the right balance that it doesn't negatively impact user experience. Newsletter sponsorship is really big and can be quite nice. Sponsored content done well is still strong for many publishers. Again, it's doing it in the right way, not too obtrusive, so that it does offer value. And then looking at this creator economy, there is so much money to be made from brand sponsorships that I feel as an industry, we are simply not taking enough advantage of, because we are lauding clicks and website traffic as more valuable than social media coverage. There's quite a bit of money if you know what you're doing to be made from YouTube views, just purely YouTube views. And then we also have these new programs from Meta, which is offering also monetization opportunities on your social media posts on Facebook, on Instagram, as long as you meet certain criteria. So yeah, that multiple revenue streams just off the top of my head. Yeah.
Thank you so much. Allow me one last question. Is there anything in our AI world right now people are overhyping too much? Do you have something in mind?
Content chunking. This is my pet peeve right now. Everybody's talking about, oh, you have to chunk your content for AI, and they're misinterpreting this as you have to write like a robot and have like Q&A format on everything. And God, no, it makes it so terrible to read because they're trying to over optimize for content chunking for vector databases. Please still write like a human. Like, if it's human written and it sounds like AI, it's so terrible to read, or it's so terrible to interact with. So that's my current pet peeve: people taking content chunking to an extreme. Well, we've really just got to understand this as structuring your content well. That's all it is. It's using paragraphs and dot points and numbered lists when appropriate, writing in short, clear paragraphs. This has been best practice for the internet for over a decade. Just because you call it something else doesn't make it new and special.
Thank you so much for being there, Jes. I loved your insights. Yeah, it was also a premiere for my podcast because you've been my first guest I interviewed in English. So thank you for learning so much. Is there something you want to say at the end, or you're
I
fine?
think just thank you so much for having me on, and nächste Mal wir können auf Deutsch sprechen.
Gerne. Dann dir noch einen schönen Tag.
Danke.